Good evening, everybody. I'm just going to get us started. Thank you for joining us this evening. I don't see Justin on just yet. So in an effort to keep us somewhat timely, I just wanted to go ahead and get us started. Again, thank you for joining us. Lots going on right now. These webinars have proven to be a really great way for us to get information to you and for you guys to understand what it is that we've got going on in the legislative session right now. So this evening, I am joined by Senate Republican leader Tim Knopp and Representative Kim Wallen, who is also one of in leadership as deputy whip, right? Yes, I got to get all my titles right in the House. So thank you two for joining us. And really, I'm going to allow Tim to get us started with where we are at and what's happening from the Senate side, and then we'll just all kind of participate and join in, probably talk over the top of each other. But at this point, why not?
Great. Thank you, Leader Breeze-Iveson and Representative Wallen. It's great to have you both on this evening. So the 42-day walkout, as most people describe it, has ended, and that is the second longest walkout in U.S. history and the longest in Oregon history. And the Republican minority is in a position to be more successful than we've ever been. Obviously, I've served in the majority back in the late 1990s and early 2000s when Republicans had majorities in both the House and the Senate. Obviously, today, we don't enjoy that majority, but the minority party did exceptional work in getting the Democrats to cave, and the whole walkout was about really four things, and that was unlawful activity by the Senate President and Senate Democrats, and unconstitutional bills that they were moving forward. And then their uncompromising stand, in other words, they refused to negotiate. And the fourth thing is we staked our ground on parental rights and restoring parental rights, especially as it related to abortion. And so we should look where we are. So the first thing that Republicans have secured is the return of $5.5 billion in the kicker to Oregon taxpayers. And there were multiple assaults on that this session. Those assaults have ended, and the House and Senate Democrats have agreed that they will not move any kicker stealing bills this session. And so the kicker checks will be the largest by over 100% than they've ever been. And that is a huge victory because we trust Oregonians with their money and with their kids. We don't trust the government. So that's the first thing. The second thing is the Democrats said they wouldn't negotiate on their agenda, and it was their way or the highway. And there would be no amendments on their radical leftist agenda. And in the end, not only were there amendments, we gutted both the bills that are still in play, and we killed the rest of their leftist progressive agenda. So let me start with the worst bill out there, and that's Senate Joint Resolution, or SJR 33. This measure would have put marriage equality in the Constitution. It would have put abortion rights in the Constitution. And this would be, again, a girl at any age for any reason for all 9 months of pregnancy. And so that would have been a constitutional right. And then transgender rights, they would also put those in the Constitution. So they were going to amend the Constitution in three ways. They called it equal rights. It's simply not true. We already have an equal rights amendment in the Oregon Constitution. And their bill was essentially trying to get around the people of Oregon who don't support everything that they were trying to push in that agenda in that bill. And so they killed SDR 33 has been moved off back to committee and it will not come back this session. So that is a huge victory. And the second thing is there were 6 gun bills, and these were not pro-gun, these were anti-Second Amendment bills. And we outright killed 5 of them, and the 6th one was reduced to ghost guns, or I would say reduced by about 3/4 to ghost guns only. And of course, we still don't support it, won't vote for it, but it was significantly curtailed. And then House Bill 2002, which has gotten the most attention because the Democrats tried to make this walkout about abortion, and we made it about restoring parental rights. And so their bill was gutted. And so we were wanting and talking about parental notification, and what ended up happening is we got a strong parental consent amendment into that bill. And we curtailed all the expansion of abortion. So abortion expansion in Eastern Oregon removed from the bill, abortion expansion on college campuses and mobile clinics, and free abortion pill removed from that bill. The money that was supposed to go to fund all those things was removed from the bill. And the clause that they were trying to actually remove was concealing of a fetus, essentially a dead baby. And we restored the law that still makes that a crime. So the only things really that are left in the bill are their statement about abortion being legal, which it already was. So even if we killed 2002, abortion would continue as it currently is. And then as it relates to transgender surgeries, or what they call gender affirming care, that is already going on in Oregon. And what they got in that bill was essentially an extension of an insurance mandate that basically already exists in through agency rule and a bulletin. And the insurance companies are essentially already covering that. So what they got in the bill, they really already had. So that's 2002. And then there were many other bills that we were able to secure that were part of the Republican agenda. So tax cuts and tax breaks for estate taxes as it relates to farms and fisheries and things of that nature. We got housing bills and tax credits for the expansion for chip makers and job creators through extensions of gain share and of enterprise zones, although we're still laying out the language on those bills. And we also got the impeachment of a referral, constitutional referral on the impeachment of the governor and all other executive offices that we have sought for some time. So there are plenty of other things that we also got, and there's also some other bills that have and will die. And so I think this has been a very successful session for minority Republicans, because if we took it the distance to kill every single bill and every budget, you essentially lose control, because the governor then calls a special session, and a special session doesn't have an end date. And we have an end date to this particular session and can control what happens through suspension of rules from here to the end. And so you can't really control what happens once a special session opens. So they were telling us that they would basically bring budgets back in a special session, and they would gut everything that we cared about. They would load them up and dare us to vote against them. And at some point, Republicans would vote or come in to vote for or against them. Again, it doesn't matter because they have the votes. So they could take us till September 15th when the basically the continuing resolution would run out, and there'd be catastrophic failure of government and everything else. But the first thing to go would be K through 12 education, which would immediately go back to the last quarter of this year. And it would mean on July 1st, layoffs in every single district of teachers and personnel. But they would, of course, blame on Republicans, and the media would obviously be willing to accomplish. So we were able to get lawful, get constitutional, and get compromise and bipartisan bills, and we were able to secure priorities in the budget for natural resources and other things. And so that's why I say it is a victory, and probably the best, quite frankly, that minority Republicans have ever done. So I'll throw it back to you, Leader Breeze Iverson, and you can pick it up from here.
You have to unmute.
There we go. Sorry, I'm good at the muting unmuting part. The thing that I think that the senator just quickly ran through some of the points of the conversation that happened, but I really want people to understand that, you know, we came into this session with more Republicans, and that's the first time that we've really been able to gain out of that super minority status. And there was a mentality inside the building that they didn't really know what to do out of the super minority status. That's how they like to handle us, was to push us down and not allow us to have a voice. And the thing that has really transpired in the last probably 2 months, I would say, is they've learned that they actually have to have the conversations with us. And while talking with them and working through this process, what we have made them realize is that there are enough of us that we need to be at the table. We need to be part of how things come together to get through the legislative session. And that hasn't been something that as long as I've been in office that we've had. We've been told what everything that's going to happen. We've been told how it's going to happen, and it caused us to have to make a big stand to start to get the conversations to happen. Now, the Senate president was not very willing to have a lot of those conversations, and it took a little bit more of a stalemate approach to get him to the table. And ultimately, I think it's very fair to say that what we have found is that the president of the Senate doesn't really know how to come to the table. But once his caucus got involved, then the caucus told him, yeah, you have to come to the table. You need to be talking to the senators. A lot of this could have been alleviated had we had more conversation on the front end from the Senate side. You know, the procedural things that the senator talked about they're real inside that building, and they really do. They came in from the Senate side in a big way to just say, we're taking away a lot of the things that you've been able to do in the past, and this is all you get to do now. And that was regard to how things were run in the committees and how things were run on the Senate floor. The House did have a little better conversation on the front end, but ultimately it was an awakening for the leadership on both sides of the building to realize that, hey, with more Republicans in the building, we actually can't do things if we don't sit down and talk to them and work with them. And if for nothing else, we really have seen a shift of that. Now, we heard very, very clearly as we went through election cycle to get to where we are today, that Oregonian voters really want to see a process that works. And that was really where we were headed in this session, is to find a process that works and make the other side understand that we are here to do business, but we want to do it in a lawful way. And we don't show up just to get ruled over. The fine line of that is making sure that we can try to get into a space where we don't just have this same conversation every time we come into the building to legislate. We need to progress the conversation in a sense that allows us to walk into that building with a conversation so that we can stop some of that bad stuff before it ever gets onto the floor. And that's really the direction that we feel we have to do for Oregonians too. And a lot of our voters have brought that to all the different districts. You know, we picked up a few voters a few extra Republicans this time, and we picked them up in districts that are what we consider the swing districts. So they've swung back and forth from a Democrat Republican or a Democrat elected official to a Republican elected official. We don't do that if we don't show voters in those areas that we're not just going to come in and stop the process. And so the gaining ground in all of this is important for us to remember. I don't want to take all the time, Kim. We're on a limited amount of time. Would you like to weigh into some of the things that were part of that conversation or the bills? And again, at any point, jump in.
Sure. I also want to talk about some of the things I'm seeing in the chat. One of them is the question about the senators getting their excused absences back. And this is a very wonky detail that, you know, when you're in the building, you have to deal with. But the fact of the matter is, it may not have been a part of this negotiation, but it's not, the final chapter hasn't been written on this yet. Politics, a lot of the time, is about timing and getting your timing right. And I still think the timing on them getting their absences back hasn't run yet. I still think that chapter is left to be written. So I would urge some patience on that front. I also think that there is some not complete information out there about what did change in the bills. And so if there's people who have specific questions about what's in the bills, I'm really happy to go over that. I'm very familiar with the bills and what they do and what Oregon law is currently, what 2002 in its first form would have done to change that, and then the current form. Frankly, Right to Life is pretty happy with the way the abortion part of it turned out, because we are the first blue state to require parental consent for abortion. And right now, if you're 15 and above, you could consent for an abortion anyway. But 2002, as it passed in its original form, or had it passed in its original form, would have allowed abortion for anyone at any age without parental consent. So getting the parental consent put back into that explicitly is a huge win. The national abortion rights people are very annoyed that Oregon, a blue state, one of the states that they look to for championing abortion rights, went to parental consent, not just notification, consent. So that to me is a huge win. There's a Breitbart headline, I don't know if you've seen it today. It says, Oregon Republicans crush radical abortion measure, risk political careers in 6-week walkout. So that's the narrative at the national level on a very conservative website. And I tend to agree with that. Anytime you're negotiating, someone's going to be unhappy and someone's going to not think you've got everything you could. And everyone's going to claim victory. So both of those things are going to happen. Everyone's going to be a little bit sad and they're all going to claim that they won. And that's just the way it's going to play out. And politics is the art of the possible. And this was what was possible when we look at everything that was in front of us: budgets, special sessions, a governor who would love to exert her emergency declaration powers because Kate got to do it. So I guarantee you, Tina is looking for an opportunity to do that. And being able to call special sessions and shove this stuff through, it's just, there were so many risks. There were the risks to their careers. I still think they may get their excuses back. I really do. This legislative session isn't over. Even though we'll hit sine die at the end of the week, this is still the same electeds until the end of 2024. So that could happen. I don't know, let's see. Now that I was talking, I was not reading the chat anymore. So, but I'm happy to, okay, so I want to address the transgender stuff. The fact of the matter is, unfortunately, because today in Oregon, children 15 and above can contract for their own medical care. They cannot contract for their parents to pay for it, but they can agree to their own medical care. So transgender surgeries are being carried out in Oregon today. The bill doesn't change that. It doesn't make it better. I will agree with that, but it doesn't make it worse. It calls it out explicitly. I hate that. Again, timing. I don't think we're there yet. We're on the cusp of being able to change this, but the courts are overturning laws that legislatures have passed to ban those procedures. So this is still playing out in red states legislatures and in the courts, but also the public is demanding in certain places. They're banning it in Europe. The timing, we're just not there yet. We will get there, but in this moment, I believe firmly that getting them to add parental consent into our abortion laws and then leaving the transgender stuff alone, and we can continue to work on that. Today's not the last day. Today, it's going to be the end of this session, but we're going to come back and work harder on this stuff. And we need to pick up seats. If we have a majority, we can do whatever we want. So and when we pick up those seats, some of them are going to be a little more purple than maybe some of us will like, but that's just what that's going to look like. And we have to be willing to go to the mat, do the ballot harvesting, do the campaigning, get these people elected, because all day long, you would rather have Republican policies than Democrat policies.
Thank you, Rep. Wallen. So one of the things we're asking about is Measure 113, and what is really the effect. So I want to read you the language of Measure 113. Here's what went into the Constitution, and I'll tell you when you really have to pay attention. Failure to attend without permission or excuse 10 or more legislative floor sessions called to transact business during a regular or special legislative session shall be deemed disorderly behavior and shall disqualify the member from holding office as a senator or representative. And here's where you need to pay attention: for the term following the election after the member's current term is completed. So those who are up, for instance, Dennis Linthicum and I are up in 2024, but our term does not expire until January of 2025. So if you read the plain language of this measure, we can't run or serve as a state representative for the term following the election after the member's current term is completed. The election after our current term is completed is not the 2024 election, it's the 2028 election. And so even the unions who wrote this measure are starting to recognize that even though they wanted it to mean something else, in reality, the plain language and the way that the courts are going to likely read this will ultimately mean victory for us, because they've spent about the last 50 to 60 years in the courts saying that the number one thing that matters is the plain language. And that is as clear as it gets, even though they wanted it to mean something else. So that's part of the reason for our confidence. We have other arguments, and we've talked to multiple attorneys and have hired them, and we'll fight this even if we don't get those absences excused by the Senate president, who there's been no due process on our side. It's been arbitrary and capricious, and we ultimately believe that we will win these cases, but it may take some time. And so we've moved to get a declaratory judgment and ruling from the Secretary of State on whether or not we can run again. And once they give that, they're either going to say, yeah, you can run again because of the plain language, or they'll say, we don't think you can run again. And then we will then have standing to go ahead and file our lawsuits. And so that's how that will work. And that's what we intend to spend our money on and defend our members, who 10 of the Senate Republicans and independents went past 10 unexcused absences. So that will be our focus come end of session if we don't get them reversed.
I'll add, there's a couple comments in the question and answer where I've seen a couple questions come up. Was the right to pray at abortion clinics protected? Yes, it was. And we made sure of that. How many gun bills were defeated? The Senate has a better answer to that than I do, as most of them started over there. Five gun bills were defeated. Was there an attempt to fix the Measure 114 that got passed? So what we did was that bill is not moving forward. There is a current lawsuit happening in Harney County that I believe is set to be heard in September. So what was decided was that we would put some dollars aside in the emergency board that the Oregon State Police could access. Should certain sections of 114 be upheld, we will have to deal with it in the 2024 session. But meanwhile, should portions be upheld, the Oregon State Police would be able to start to go through the background checks. I think there was a background check piece to it that we were concerned we needed to make sure they had dollars to actually enact should something happen. But it is being held in a SPA, as we say, or a special I don't know. Yes, so it's being held in a special account that will not be utilized until such a time that the courts uphold certain sections of that bill. So those were a few of the things that I saw while others were chatting. Does anybody else want to go ahead, Representative Wallen?
Two more gun bills in the House were also killed because it was an omnibus 3-bill monstrosity that went through the House, and 2 of the portions of that were removed. So the ghost gun part that's still in there is federal law. So it doesn't, our law, if you have to comply with the federal law anyway, so it doesn't really change anything significantly. We were able to kill the other parts of it. Ranked choice voting has gone through the House floor. It will go on the Senate floor. It will go to the voters. It will not just take place automatically. So if we want to defeat ranked choice voting, then that's a campaign that we should ramp up.
And just to add into that slightly, in here, I don't mean to talk over the top of you, but we're all jumping in here. The ranked choice voting piece, we do need to pay attention to that. It does have certain restrictions in it, and it has to be agreed to within the jurisdiction that the voting or the election is taking place. So communities, counties have to decide that that's what they want to do, or districts have to decide that's how they want to run their elections. And that should take place at the local level, which should allow us to all weigh into our local jurisdictions and really be a voice, so that it's not something that is held to a statewide standard. Again, this is something that we need to be on the forefront of fighting, but there are some other nuances to it that create more of a local control. With that, we are bumping up to 7:30. I don't know if there's anything that anybody wants to add at this point, but I believe I was given the note that we were supposed to go till 7:30. So is there anything anybody'd like to add in closing?
Well, I just want to thank all the precinct committee people who are on the call and who serve. I've served for over 30 years, and I've been exactly where you guys are at as a grassroots activist. That's how I got started in this. And it's important, I think, for you guys to know that we, in fact, are standing for Republican principles every day. And it is an onslaught in Oregon. And so to defeat what we've defeated is honestly, truly extraordinary considering where we're at. And the goal coming into this session was to be positioned to win even more seats in the next election. And we put ourselves in a position to be able to do that because the voters that we need to get in these elections are those non-affiliated voters and those, they call them blue dog Democrats. So the pro-Second Amendment, pro-life Democrats. And those people will support us over the radical left, because the bills that they voted for No, I mean, Republicans didn't vote for 2005 or 2002, you know, by and large, and all the Democrats did. And so if the electorate will hold them accountable, we in fact can pick up some more seats. And so that was the goal coming out of this session, was to do some good work for Oregonians, return your money, and defend the principles that we hold dear. And we in fact are doing that. And we will do that right up until the session ends. And it constitutionally ends on Sunday at midnight. So thank you all for fighting the battle with us and declare victory. You know, we did make the Democrats cave. You made the Democrats cave. And I know they're saying that they didn't and that they won, but what else do you expect them to say? The Republicans outed us and defeated us, and oh my gosh, I mean, of course not, right? So, but y'all did, and the 13 did, and the House hanging with us did, and they did cave because they said they wouldn't negotiate, negotiate. And they did, and they caved. So there you go. Thanks so much.
Thank you, guys.
And
Thank you.
we'll be in touch with you again.
We will be back in touch. You guys have supported us thus far with a lot of prayers and encouragement for members. And I'm just going to suggest, if you are still inclined to do so, please let members know that. It has been a rough week, and we have done a rough couple of weeks. We've done the things that we can to make it better for Oregon. We believe that is what we're doing moving forward, and members do need to hear that as well. So you guys have been great about supporting us. We look forward to more webinars. We're available. We'll be available. We've got just a few days ahead of us to get to the end of this session, and then we won't have a special session, so we won't have to come back until next year. So there is that. Thank you all for your time tonight, and we will look forward to the next time. Thank you.
Thank you.